Now with the NFL season over halfway through, there's plenty of moves changing the league as we know it. Now one of the biggest stories recently surrounding trades in the NFL is none other than Le'Veon Bell. Obviously a lot of controversy was surrounding his name over the last year, in which he held out the entire 2018 season waiting for the contract he felt he deserved, and this led him to switch organizations from the Steelers to the Jets this year. But it looks like once again he's on the move. After he signed a $52 million deal with New York earlier this year, many criticized this move because of Le'Veon purposely going to a losing Jets team that had no shot at contention in the upcoming year. And because of this team being significantly worse than the Pittsburgh team Le'Veon was a part of, his numbers are now the lowest they've been in years as well. But leading into this year's trade deadline, the team in fact began shopping Bell around and many teams were interested. Le'Veon himself actually addressed all of the trade rumors on Uninterrupted 17 Weeks podcast recently, and he said,
"There was a lot of trade speculations and rumors about, me getting traded obviously from the Jets to other multiple teams, and they were actually true. There were times where I found out from my agent, he had talked to the Jets and things like that. There was teams like Houston, the Packers, the Kansas City Chiefs, and surprisingly the Steelers were all in the mix of trying to trade for me. And from what I heard and I understand was the Jets were really asking for a high price and a lot for me. And on top of that, my actual contract was kind of tough for teams to deal with, which is understandable. Not too many teams really want to pay that high of a price for a running back.
Now over the last few weeks, another huge name that many have expected to be dealt away has been Cam Newton, as many teams around the league have seen what's come of his situation in Carolina, with Cam becoming a pretty consistent quarterback throughout his career. Over 3,000 yards and 20 touchdowns a season is what we've grown to expect from a player like him. But this year's been a different type of season for him than the last 8 years. Cam's missed a significant amount of time playing just 2 games this year after suffering a foot injury. Now solely based on the fact of his injury history, this is a main factor in Carolina's trade decision, as they've become more comfortable in trading his huge contract to another team and starting fresh. But during this time that Newton's been out, Kyle Allen has had his time to shine with Carolina as their starting quarterback, and some analysts believe with the performances that Allen's put up, he in fact could become the face of their franchise. Now with all of that being said, Cam's helped out tremendously despite being inactive, but has continued to assist the team regardless, and Allen himself even talked about this. He said, "Right now he's acting as a coach. He's acting as a guy who's seen a lot in this league over the past 9 years, and he's trying to help this team win. And I think you can see that's the overall theme every week. We just want to win. Whatever anyone could do on this team, whatever position they're in, they're gonna do it. And Cam's no different in that, so he's been really good in all phases." Now with Cam set to become a free agent in 2021, many teams around the league realize the situation for what it really is. And that's the fact that the Panthers could be looking to move on with a new future. With Newton suffering injuries for years now, many feel it's made Carolina want to take things in a different direction, since they're doing better with their young quarterback instead. But regardless of the perception, many teams around the league have shown significant interest in Cam because of his winning mentality and consistent numbers. Stephen A. Smith actually brought up this situation on First Take recently, and felt there's one team in particular that should jump at this trade as soon as possible. And he said,
"They're flowing without Cam Newton, and I got news for you. I think there's somebody else that needs Cam Newton more desperately than the Carolina Panthers. And you know what I think that team is, Ryan? I think it is the Chicago Bears. I think that the Chicago Bears should trade for Cam Newton. They need somebody with that moxie. They need somebody with that athletic ability. They need somebody with heart. They don't need somebody that's still recovering from being booed on draft night or shortly thereafter when he went to the United Center in Chicago. Mitchell Trubisky, the number 2 overall pick, and was soundly booed by the crowd there because he's not who they wanted. They wanted a Deshaun Watson. And so you got a guy that's still trying to prove himself and recover from all of that. The mental makeup, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Mr. Trubisky, I'm just calling it like I see it. The mental makeup that he seems to have does not seem to be made for Chicago. I think somebody like Cam would be better. I think he needs a fresh start. I think Carolina already has it. With Kyle Allen, you roll with that. I would trade Cam Newton to the Chicago Bears.
Now teams at this point still believe in Cam because of the resume he's proven over his career so far. Yeah, he's become an injury concern and is signed under a contract worth over $100 million. But many teams around the league feel he can provide them with what they need to become successful for years to come. And it was even reported that over 10 teams around the league have shown interest in acquiring him once the rumors began. And that was back heading into this year's trade deadline. So with Carolina becoming more successful with their young quarterback under a far less significant contract, it only makes sense that Newton's the next big name on the move. Now AJ Green is yet another big name that many teams are interested in this season. Obviously, with him being a part of Cincinnati, the team hasn't had much success outside of him, and with him sitting out the whole year, they have yet to even win a game as they sit at the bottom of the standings. But regardless of AJ still recovering from a recent ankle surgery, many teams have shown they're willing to pay a huge price to get him alongside an elite quarterback to finish his career strong. Yeah, AJ's 31 years old at this point in time, but he's still recorded 602 receptions for over 8,900 yards and 63 touchdowns in 111 games across his 8 NFL seasons, so he's easily one of the top wideouts on the market. Now with that being said, teams like the Packers, who despite the recent success look to acquire a star receiver to go alongside Aaron Rodgers, and AJ is one of the top players on their radar seeing as Rodgers has been thriving with undrafted free agents for weeks, so it's scary to think what he could become with star receivers around him, which is exactly why Green Bay looks to make huge moves moving forward. Now with Antonio Brown constantly being surrounded by headlines all year for a long list of reasons, it's no doubt he's still valuable, and many teams recognize this, which is why so many are looking into signing him the first chance they get. Now obviously him initially being traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Oakland Raiders was one of the biggest moves leading into the new season, but didn't even make it to then, as he was released and immediately picked up by the New England Patriots. But once again, with plenty of controversy surrounding his name at the beginning of the year, he was once again released by them as well, and despite going on rants through social media on Twitter and Instagram, Antonio's emphasized that he's passionate, and he does in fact want to make an NFL comeback, and many teams are interested in picking him up once the controversy surrounding his name fades away a bit. But according to ESPN, Seattle was a team seriously interested in picking up Antonio Brown to pair alongside their star quarterback of Russell Wilson, and even he was pushing the organization to pick him up, but the Seahawks inevitably went with Josh Gordon once he was released by the New England Patriots recently as well. Afterwards, Brown's agent actually told ESPN there's actually quite a few teams interested in signing AB once his entire process with the league is over and everybody moves forward. It's also been reported that many teams are actually willing to look past Brown's recent controversies over the last year, and that's mainly due to his ability on the field, and he'd be a huge upgrade to a handful of contending teams around the league. Nevertheless, Antonio is a 7-time Pro Bowler, who just last year caught 104 passes for nearly 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns, so it'd be disrespectful to say that he doesn't belong in a team in the league today. Now, arguably the biggest move of the offseason leading into this new year for the NFL was Odell Beckham Jr. getting traded from the Giants to the Browns, and OBJ even felt disrespected that they traded him to a team like Cleveland, and felt this was sort of a move to somewhat kill his career. OBJ actually sat down for an interview where he talked about the move sending him from New York to Cleveland, and basically how he felt when it first happened, but he said, "My initial reaction was not disappointment, I felt disrespected. Like after everything I've done for them, this is me being honest. This team has not been good for the last 6 years period. Even the year we went to the playoffs and everyone was talking about this and that and we went there and I didn't have a great playoff game, don't get me wrong. I had a terrible game but I left the game with 7 targets and I'm supposed to be your #1 receiver. I left the game with 7 targets, we lost, they scored 40 points, it's just all bad. I felt disrespected because I felt like I was a main reason to keeping that brand alive. They were getting primetime games still as a 5-11 team. Why? Because people want to see the show. You want to see me play, that's just real rap. I'm not sitting here like it's because of me, but let's just be real. That's why we're still getting primetime games. I felt disrespected they weren't even man enough to even sit me down in my face and tell me what's going on. Now despite all of this going down, leading into the new season, Odell vowed to give it his all for this team to try and get as close to a championship as possible alongside Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry with Cleveland, which of course because of it being said by Odell himself attracted many headlines leading into the new season. But during the first few games of the year, plenty of eyes were on Odell so closely that many noticed him warming up with rare editions of Richard Mille watches. In his first game of the season, he rocked a $350,000 watch prior and during the actual game, and many took notice, and because of the headlines surrounding something so small, he came out the following week with something even more ridiculous, this time a $2 million watch. But while playing with this organization, he's having the lowest numbers of his entire career, besides the year that he actually got injured in, which the trade deadline raised many rumors surrounding his name. According to Bleacher Report, with the Browns continuing to lose games and the team failing to get their star receiver of Odell the ball as often as he'd gotten targets in previous years, many teams have already been eyeing a deal to get him out of Cleveland to a contender. And despite this being a down year for OBJ, many realize it's solely based on the situation he's playing in, and that's for an inexperienced team that didn't really have championship aspirations heading into this new season. But with that being said, many contenders will gladly make a run at him sooner than later. The Packers were one of the first teams thrown in the mix to actually make a run at Odell, as we've seen Aaron Rodgers continue to dominate in Green Bay, and having a star receiver head over there would be unbelievable to see, as Rodgers hasn't really had the greatest supporting cast around him. And with Aaron being considered one of the greats at the quarterback position, one thing he lacks is a significant amount of playoff success. But Odell's as hungry as ever for a championship as well, so a move bringing him in makes sense. Another team that was huge on picking up OBJ was the 49ers. They actually tried to make moves for him years ago while he was still in New York as well. But with the 49ers reaching a new level of success this season, it's definitely scary that they were trying to make a move for Odell heading into the deadline, where they're trying to pair him up with their star quarterback of Jimmy Garoppolo. But last but not least, the Patriots just lost 2 star receivers in Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon. Obviously, even with that going down, the team has a great supporting cast around Tom Brady, and they've continued to excel, being one of the top teams in the entire league like every year. But New England is no stranger to scooping up any star talent that they can, as we've seen in years past. That's exactly why Beckham is on their radar. Years ago, the Patriots were already trying to make a run at OBJ while he was with the Giants, so it's no surprise they have significant interest once again. Odell actually addressed these trade rumors recently, and he said,
I think 2-3 years ago there was the whole speculations and all that was going on, and I was willing and ready to go over there at any point in time. And that was always a dream of mine to play for fucking Tom Brady. Like, it's Tom Brady and Belichick.
Now, with that being said, Odell's continued to praise this organization over the years despite never playing there, which made it very clear where he'd like to end up. He gave high praise towards Tom Brady especially, and he said,
like I say, Tom Brady's the GOAT, and I know we've done some GOAT cloning, so I think that I think there's something going on. He's not human to be, playing the way he's still playing, mentally prepared every single game, decisive decisions, knows how to manage a game. Plays offense and defense with the way that he plays. He's just very smart. He's the best to ever do it. I don't think anybody can really argue it. He's just the greatest. So I definitely want some of the water that he's drinking. Hopefully, that's who everyone. I know for me as well. We all are inspired to be like.
And Odell even gave high praise towards their legendary coach Belichick as well, and he said,
"This is a coach who I've looked at for the longest time, and I have a love-hate relationship for him because they beat any team I ever wanted to win a Super Bowl. The only team I ever followed was the Rams when it was greatest show on turf, and I was like the team I was watching as a kid, like loved them, and then they beat them. So I was always rooting for him because I loved to see him succeed, but then I always wanted somebody to take him. So going against Bill Belichick, this is somebody who I have much respect for.
Hey you, click this video right here. Look at his height. You won't believe the tallest players in NFL history. What are you still doing here? Click right now, I'll see you there.